Welcome to the Sounds of the World. We are your hosts, Hillary and Bill.
Together, we're going to travel around the world to discover new music, discuss musical topics, and interview fascinating people.
Our world is a buffet of music, and it is time to eat. All right, everybody, welcome back. That was From All I Wonder by our next guest. We have a very young and exciting composer on our podcast. He enjoys exploring philosophical and spiritual views on humanity, nature, and life itself. He balances contemporary and evocative textures with unconventional and experimental soundscapes. He's been performed by the Zenith Saxophone Quartet, Sputter Box, which you just heard, and the Blank Experiment. He has received commissions from numerous soloists and ensembles, including the Three Rivers Wind Symphony, Dr. Jordan Venemer, and the Hope College Wind Ensemble, and numerous middle, high, and collegiate programs. He has studied at Michigan State with David Beidenbender and Zhu Tian, as well as NYU or New York University, where he studied with John Kafer, Erwin Fish, and Ira Newborn. He's a founding member and current board member of the Millennium Composers Initiative. Today, we're going to talk to him about his life, passion for composing, and how to be a composer in this new post-COVID, during COVID era. So please welcome Josh Trentadue.
Hi, thanks for having me, Bill.
Thank you so much. Oh, we're excited to have you. Again, if you're listening, Hillary is ill, but she'll be back soon. So, but thank you so much for being here. It's really exciting. I've followed you for a little bit and really enjoy your music. And the passion you seem to have for bringing new composers together and kind of highlighting not just your music, but as a group community activity, bringing other people in, which is great.
Thank you so much. That means a lot to me. I appreciate that.
It's great. It's great. Yeah. So let's just start off from very basics and very intro. And what are you, what's your musical background? Do you come from a musical family? What's your history?
So I don't come from a musical family per se, but my mom did play clarinet when she went to school, and my dad played percussion, which is where really my interest in pursuing percussion performance for some time came from. He played percussion in college for a little bit and also in high school for a little bit and whatnot. But as far as my background goes, the earliest memory I have that was related to music was one day my dad and I were just messing around with this old Yamaha keyboard that he had. I think it was like 40 keys or something like that. And yeah, it was one of those nice little carry-on ones you can bring to like gigs and whatnot. But It was the 90s and it had all those nice 90s MIDI sounds and stuff. But what I remember about this particularly was that he was playing the Beatles song "Let It Be" in the background because he loves the Beatles. We grew up listening to that all the time in a number of rock bands and so on and so forth, and a lot of Star Wars too. Yeah. But he was playing "Let It Be" in the background, and I guess what happened was he was trying to get me to basically playing the main riff at the beginning of it that basically opens the whole thing on piano and whatnot, just the melody part. I was maybe 4, 5, 6 years old at the time, maybe younger, maybe older, something like that. And what I could remember was being able to play it after a little bit of time on my own without my dad, trying to play it out for me. He was so shocked that basically he decided that I needed to, start doing a lot more with music and whatnot. And sort of my passion grew from there with my own experiences. I started out with taking piano lessons at a very early age. I don't tell people this often, but I did actually play violin for a year or two in elementary school. But I dropped it because I also, I dropped it because I also started picking up percussion then too. And
Okay.
Were the two things, yeah. As you can imagine, with someone my age, with my interests and whatnot, percussion and piano was the thing that I stuck with.
Yeah.
It just like that. No diss on violin. Y'all are wonderful too. Soloists, just sticking all of those violin concerti out there.
Right.
But in any case, that was where my interest started, as far as my musical background goes. And performance was something that I stuck with through middle school, through high school, and through my undergrad year of college. And to tell you the truth, I don't perform as much anymore. I at least didn't before COVID started anyway. And with everything happening with the pandemic, of course, that's not really happening that much. I guess the most I could say is, when I'm creating my own audio demos of my music, I'm also doing some programming myself. So I'm playing a little bit of that. That's the extent of it at this point, as far as my background goes.
And so you doing percussion and piano, which, that kind of lends themselves well to each other. They, if you're a percussionist and you can play piano, you're going to get a lot of those piano parts.
That's true. And that's actually what happened to me in high school. I was in the percussion section at my high school's top ensemble for basically all four of my years in high school. But right around the end of my sophomore year onward, my band director noticed that I was, I could play piano pretty well too. So he started asking me if I could start playing these piano parts in the wind ensemble, which I agreed to, and that went well. He started programming more challenging repertoire with those piano parts too, because now his band was capable of being able to do that, sort of when I was able to fulfill those roles and whatnot. So I have to say, probably the most challenging piano part I had to play in band was a Donald Granton piece. I think it was called Starry Crown. I remember that pretty well. The band I was in high school took that for their performance at Carnegie Hall, and that was one of the pieces I remember we performed there. So yeah, that was a really cool experience being able to play at Carnegie Hall.
Yeah. I was I started piano at 8, and so when I got to college and did percussion, my band directors were all like, "Ooh, how about you play this piano part?" And
it's great, isn't it? You're basically the go-to person for that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, if you can build up your chops and do it, then go for it, right? It's an opportunity. And it ended up being an opportunity for me too, because I just remembered my last year of high school, I was asked to play Rhapsody in Blue. And that was the big concert that we did at the end of the year, was me just hammering out this part for Rhapsody in Blue. And that was a pretty unforgettable experience, too. Would I do it again? Probably not.
Right.
Because Gershwin, what are you doing? It's so cool, but I can't do that again. I did it the first time. You know what I mean? It was a wonderful concert, though, and I will never forget that experience and opportunity. It was just absolutely wonderful, and I wouldn't, that's not something to easily forget,
Oh no, definitely. When I was in my master's, we had Eric Whitaker come by, because I was at Reno, and he lived, he's from Nevada, so he came by, and we played the Seal song or Seal Lullaby. And I had to play the piano part, and he came up right next to me and was standing there, and then we started talking about how to arrange for piano, and I was just like, I don't know, man. It's it's your piece, but it's sometimes when you've got these big jumps and you want them to be legato, it's it's hard.
Yeah.
No, it's cool.
Some pretty masterful technique there, but that's amazing. That's the other thing that I loved. Too, I have to agree with you on that. Just the opportunity to be able to work with other living composers on their music. Mm-hmm. One experience I had playing a piano part in high school, Michigan State's Wind Symphony was playing O Earth, O Stars, and David Maslanka was there as the guest composer. He was able to come by to my high school and work with us because we were playing his piece Traveler, which is a pretty involved piano part too. And I remember just being absolutely mesmerized by his entire presence there. I don't know if you've met Maslanka, but
Oh yeah.
When you were in a room with him, the whole mood just changed. You were just transported to a completely different realm of existence, quite honestly.
Oh yeah. He has a presence. I mean,
yeah, he had a very particular view of humanity, of nature, and of spirituality that, just really stuck with me. And you could feel that through the music too, especially when he worked with groups. And I just remember being so mesmerized by that whole experience, and just working on that part. He was really attuned to that part that I had for piano as well for his piece, because Traveler has a very involved piano part, especially at the end when everything just sort of dies away and whatnot. So that's one experience I definitely won't forget either. Yeah, working with living composers is fantastic. More people should do it.
Oh, definitely true.
But yeah. Like I said, a lot of really wonderful experiences, quite honestly.
Yeah, and it's surprising also how few people think about the piano when it comes to like a wind ensemble or a concert band. They just, when you ask someone what's in the concert band or a wind ensemble, they instantly think of all the wind instruments, and there's the typical brass instruments or typical percussion, and then you're like, yeah. And then sometimes there's a harp, and even sometimes there's a piano. More often there's a piano, and people are like, what? Like, why would you play piano in a wind ensemble or a concert band,
Yeah, I know what you mean. I'm sure that some have probably asked that same question for playing piano in an orchestra. But to be fair, the orchestra rep has about 300 or 400 extra years of repertoire that eventually involves piano and a bunch of piano concerti too. So it's like, sort of goes hand in hand. It just depends on how you use it. I mean, with my own upper level compositions, I try to use piano as much as I can if I think it's appropriate for the piece for one reason or another. But again, it just depends on context. Sort of like what you were alluding to. It depends on context.
Oh yeah. So how did you get into composing from that? Like,
well, I mean, you just heard me talk about a lot of performance experiences that I had from high school, and I certainly had those with college too. The experiences I had at MSU's band program was just fantastic. All of that sort of lended itself more from my high school experiences, because I pursued a degree in undergrad, and specifically in composition. I made that decision basically during my high school years. At some point, it just clicked for me that actual human beings were writing this music I was playing, and I thought, well, this is really connecting with me. Maybe I can do the same for other people too, and that would be really nice. They can get something from this that, you can't necessarily speak or articulate or something like that. And music had basically been a part of my life. It's not something it's one of those things that you can't really take away, no matter what it could be, like whether it's just listening to it or performing it or writing it or whatnot. So early on in high school, I knew that I wanted to go into music as a career, but eventually I realized that, I wanted to write. I wanted to actually compose, because I was hearing and playing all of these masterful works like John Coriano's Circus Maximus, for example.
Wow, yeah.
It was a big one for me. I remember the first time listening to that. Just powerful. And, all of that sort of led to me wanting to get into composing and whatnot. And it's a lot of hard work. It has been a lot of hard work for me too. But, so far the reward of all of it has been really wonderful. And that's because it's given me a chance to just work with so many amazing people in the process. So. Yeah.
It's really interesting how many people who are composers say that they want to achieve the same kind of, Joel Thompson said that he wanted to create that kind of spiritual reaction or that kind of emotional reaction from people that he felt when he was a participant rather than a composer. And it's just, I can totally sympathize with that feeling. I want to create that feeling like, like, Quinn Mason,
yes,
and so,
yes.
He and I both share a huge affinity for The Rite of Spring, and,
great piece, really great piece.
And when I was young, man, I was just like, I had the score and I sat there with it and I looked at all the parts and how it worked. And I didn't know theory worth anything, but I had to know how this worked as a mechanical part,
Yeah.
So it's it's really interesting how many of us are actually falling into that kind of idea.
Oh, I know what you mean. I have to ask though, since you brought it up.
Okay.
What was your first? What was the first time that you ever listened to Rite of Spring? Was it Fantasia? Because that was it for me. It was I was introduced to that piece through Fantasia.
I think I probably heard it through that, but I remember like I would always ask for like classical music for Christmas and birthday and stuff.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And so I can distinctly remember like a CD or a tape that had it on there. Like I can see it in my mind's eye, you know what I mean? And just listening to that and just being struck by, because it had that and the Scythian Suite by Prokofiev. And it was like the barbarous music or whatever, So it was those two things, and it was just that always stuck with me. And then I was like, then seeing, Fantasia again, I was just like, oh, that's where it is. Except now it's out of order,
Yeah, because they had reworked, because Disney and his team had reworked the music to fit with the story, this different story that they were trying to tell with, which, if my memory serves correctly, Stravinsky actually, ended up liking it in the end.
Oh, okay.
Something like that. Yeah, I should probably mention too, the other thing that really got me into composing was film music. That's a huge part of my background, and I ended up getting a master's degree in screen scoring and music as well. Sort of, for those reasons and others. But growing up, I listened to a lot of, like, as I mentioned, Star Wars, but also eventually other film music too that really struck with me, and that's really inspired me to this day in a sense. Even if it's music that doesn't necessarily work for a concert setting, but is still able to elicit so much emotional reaction, depending on the score, in a person when they listen to it, even if it's just the music on their own, or which is the kind of film described, or something that is so strongly in connection with like a scene or a mood or an emotion that you remember that, you still feel that, even if you are listening to it. Like, Inception, for example, Hans Zimmer's score for that. You hear Time, or you hear a lot of his other music for that, and you know where it is in the scene.
Oh yeah.
It elicits that emotional response. So that was another reason that really got me into composing. Really was a lot of film music, particularly that of John Williams, and of course, I have other inspirations and influences like Giacchino and Desplat and John Powell and Rachel Portman and whatnot. That particular bit of influence, I think, is lending itself to the symphony I'm working on in a way. It sort of has that filmic influence on it because we're trying as much as we possibly can to tell a narrative through the music and whatnot with all of these pieces that are coming together. So,
yeah,
if that makes any sense.
Oh, definitely. I think music, I feel like, in my personal opinion, music that can tell a story or at least portray some sort of plot, so to speak, definitely seems to engage the audience, I think, at a higher level than if it was just performance piece. Does that make sense?
That does make sense to me. I don't want to discredit.
No.
Of course, I don't want to discredit the pieces out there that exist that is exploring like something particular. Like, for example, David Biedenbender's Cyclotron. His piece for that was inspired by the machine itself, and the facilities at Michigan State University that was, developing new scientific advances and whatnot. And he wrote an entire piece based on that.
Right.
And in a way, it's programmatic, but it's not necessarily telling a narrative. It's exploring really what these scientific capabilities and what this machine can do, and so on and so forth. And it works perfectly. And there are other pieces out there that exist, that doesn't necessarily have a programmatic influence, but definitely succeeds, on that front, depending on what it is. But I have to agree with you a little bit. I do tend to lean more towards programmatic types of compositions in my own work, because that's what I'm interested in. I'm trying to break away from that a little bit in the sense that of exploring more abstract ideas, or, you know, these philosophical and spiritual views that I've been starting to explore with some of my own recent work. But even so, it that's basically the gist of it, I think.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with you definitely that there's plenty of pieces that definitely hold their own, but then to have a little bit of that storyline does seem to, you know, I don't know, I guess increase the capture of the audience.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I do find a lot of my music kind of follows that kind of idea too, as well.
Yeah, I know what you mean by that. I do want to encourage you to have a listen to Psychotron, for example. Go check that out, because it is such a good piece.
Oh,
it
definitely.
Really is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Such a good piece.
So
I do this a lot. I recommend other composers' music too, as much as my own, because I'm just trying to get out there and listen to new works and whatnot. And the Millennium Composers Initiative has certainly helped with that a lot, you know, in some respects. So.
Yeah. So you kind of talked about this a little bit, but like, who are some of your other your inspirations, that people that you really enjoy? So you said John Williams, and David, of course. But who else?
Yeah, so I listed off a couple of the film composers that I'm inspired by. Growing up, I listened to a lot of rock music, including a little bit of heavy metal, a little bit of progressive rock. So there's the bands like Queen and Rush and Dream Theater, the Beatles, and Pink Floyd, and so on. Going through the latter half of my high school years and my college years, I started, you know, listening to more music, and it turned into this wide eclectic variety. So jazz, indie music, like Bon Iver comes to mind, for example, or the music of John Coltrane, or and so on. So again, like a wide variety. A lot of classical music growing up, but that's because, you know, I was, you know, studying music, and I figured I probably should just listen to a lot of these pieces like The Planets, or The Rite of Spring, or I don't know, Liszt's Hungarian Rhapsody No. 2 or something like that.
Right.
But, you know, throughout all of that, you know, I'm still was trying to explore new music. Was listening to a lot of current film music that was coming out at the time. And now, so my inspirations are like, it's a wide list basically, and to be honest with you, it's always growing. Like the past couple of years, especially, has been a lot more new music and art community, especially band music, for composers like Omar Thomas and Julie Giroux and Jennifer Jolly and Kate Nishimura and so on. A lot of composers in our field doing really incredible things right now, especially, you know, for situations like we're in right now with adaptable ensemble music and whatnot. And then basically my other group of inspirations at this point is my friends and colleagues in my composer initiative and the incredible work that they're doing right now. Like Kevin Day, for example, is doing really incredible work. When does the man not compose?
Right. For
real.
When does he sleep? That's the question.
When does he sleep? This is the burning question in my mind for the past year. All kidding aside, you know, he's writing really incredible music too. Like, I'm just so blessed that we have a great friendship and that we've been able to work together a couple of times. Like, I had an opportunity to work with him for a jazz piece that I wrote. That I wrote for him and for Dr. Jordan Van Femer and for his group, the Holland Concert Jazz Orchestra. They premiered that last year. Kevin played on it. The Holland Concert Jazz Orchestra was fantastic. And Kevin's a great jazz pianist too. He's not just a composer. He's a great jazz pianist.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm really lucky that we're collaborating again on my symphony too, because it involves that jazz element, and he's the pianist in the combo, and he's, you know, like everybody else in the group, he's gonna freaking shred, and it's gonna be amazing, you know? So, you know, again, Kevin's an example. Harrison J. Collins, he's writing some fantastic music. Salvador Alon Jacobo, he's been writing some pretty great band music recently, and now adaptable ensemble music too. So, you know, composers like them, and another friend of mine, Janae Maizano, she writes video game music and is doing incredible work in that field right now. So, you know, it's just, like I said, it's my friends and colleagues. It's a wide variety of influences and inspirations going back from like my early years to basically now. I'm always trying to listen to music as much as I possibly can. And the important thing I have to stress about that is just going after what you said earlier about community, about supporting each other. And that's really something I try to do a lot now because it's very important, especially in a field especially in a field as competitive as this.
Oh yeah, and almost oversaturated in a way, you know. So
yeah, in some ways. I mean, we could talk about the commercialization of Christmas every day and every year, and it's all these arrangements coming out, all of the Christmas arrangements, and there's some good ones for Flex Band now, though. I think Julie Giroux just recently put out some Christmas music. She has some great Christmas music. I just finished churning out a grade 6 or whatever it is, high octane Christmas piece for wind ensemble because why not? Let's just throw a bunch of Christmas carols into a quad rock piece and have them fight each other and go bombastic with it. Why not? We have band music like that, you know?
Right. How the nature of what we are in, the field that we're in, it can seem very oversaturated and yet barren at the same time, and I think that really lends well to the fact that you helped create this new initiative, the Millennium Composers Initiative. Maybe you could give a little background on that and what the purpose of it all is and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So back in, I think it was 2018, one of my colleagues and I, Duncan Peterson-Jones, wanted to start essentially a group of composers that we could network with to help support each other because we were starting to realize, we were both in graduate school, and we were starting to realize that having a network of composers like us that could support each other as we start to build a career for ourselves individually and make our way out there, it would be great to have this network where we could support each other and do that regardless of what kind of music that each composer was writing. So we started out as a group of 5 or 6 composers, if I'm not mistaken. That year, it grew to about 13. And as the initiative continued to grow, we sort of realized that our aim was that we were really representing and supporting composers around our age, no matter what kind of music they were writing, or what their background was, or what their identity was. So with that in mind, realizing that this is going to be the purpose of our group and whatnot for MCI, we started outreaching to basically anyone who wanted to be a part of it and, did a call for composers and whatnot. So as of this year, we're a group of 39 composers.
Wow.
A lot of us write for, it's fantastic. And I'm just so happy to see how much it's grown and all the opportunities that have come from it. But our members have basically written everything from concert music to film music to jazz to electronic music and vocal music, basically anything and everything in, the entire music field almost, apart from all of the other fantastic work that they're doing in other fields too. We just had a member of MCI finish a year-long internship Score Academy program with Junkie XL with Tom Holkenberg. She just finished that recently, which was pretty cool. And stemming from that, we wanted to try and give our composers opportunities as well to meet with and collaborate with other chamber groups, other ensembles, to work with them and, maybe diversify the catalog a little bit, give them a chance to write a piece of music that they haven't written before. So hence collaborations with like the Zenith Saxophone Quartet and the Blank Experiment and the Holland Concert Jazz Orchestra. And then we actually do have a collab concert with two of the members of the Zenith Quartet. They're calling themselves the Zen Duo, and they're both fantastic. We have a concert with them next Monday where they're going to be premiering 5 new works written by 5 of our members. So that's coming up. And those opportunities, besides the collaborative concerts, which we're, still expanding upon, have also outreach to like various conferences and whatnot where we're able to, again, support and promote our composers, help them to build their network, not just with performers and chamber groups, but also with, the Midwest Clinic Conference, for example, for all the band and orchestra and jazz directors looking for new music, seeing what's out there in the scene and whatnot, giving our composers a chance to be able to get their music out there to a different field and whatnot. So I'm just really amazed with how much this initiative has grown in the past couple of years. I'm excited to see where it's going. We have a lot planned at the moment, and pandemic notwithstanding, we've been set back a little bit, but we have a lot planned. And I'm just really happy right now that we're able to continue the support for our members and so on, and that we have this network. And speaking personally, I've made a lot of friends from starting this initiative, including like Kevin Day, for example, and Harrison in Salvador. And, I'm grateful to all of them. It's been really helpful, especially during this pandemic where I haven't really traveled since last March. All the concerts have been canceled, and my network of friends has been basically over a Zoom call or a social media call or stuff like that. And that's sort of how the Symphony's been being planned too, Zoom meetings and other video conferencing and whatnot. So I guess where I'm going with that is I'm really grateful to have the friends that I do in this field, because I don't know where I would be without them right now, especially during this pandemic,
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you feel similarly or whatnot, but, it's at least how I feel.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of the whole impetus behind this, was that, being stuck at home and, you're around family all day, and it's like that's great, but you miss the communication with other people, and so that's why I got Hillary to start this with me, and to be able to talk with creative people, no matter what genre that they're in, is so invigorating and inspiring,
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And I have to say, I think that extends to the rest of our community as well, too. Going off of that, that's the one thing I miss about, all of this going on right now is the live music aspect. I have not heard, the last time I heard any live music at all, I think somebody in my apartment complex was practicing one of their instruments, because I'm in Connecticut and I'm pretty close to where the Coast Guard band is.
Oh,
and I think the last so I think the last live instrument I heard, other than my electronic keyboard, because I play piano, I play it a little bit every now and again, was somebody practicing their violin or cello or something like that. I haven't been to a concert since January of this year. Because all of my plans had been canceled because of the pandemic and whatnot. It's been really disheartening. And I know it's been especially difficult for performers and the students as well, struggling to get through school right now. It's just, but that's the one thing I miss the most, is at the end of the day, you can make up as many audio demos as you want. You can do as many adaptable ensemble pieces as you want for virtual performances, but it's not the same as physically immersing yourself in a concert hall and just seeing and hearing someone play and seeing a premiere or a performance or whatnot. I miss the full band concerts, but at the same time, we can't do it right now because it's just not safe. And I get that. That's more important than anything else. So, but,
I mean, even in this, different. We weren't like overly active religiously, but even with this, you can't even like attend church where there's a choir, and it's like, you realize just how prevalent live music can be within your life, when you don't have it around you all the time, so
yeah
Yeah, so the initiative is really cool, and I love that you are helping with bringing, like I said earlier, other people into the fold and help bringing them up, and so it's kind of like maybe like a composer's commune in a way that you all work together to help promote each other and yourselves, and then you all celebrate in whatever happens, or
Yeah, that's basically the gist of it. Yeah, it's like I said earlier, we're all just really supporting each other at this point and helping each other grow, which is what I think any good, community of people or network or anything like that needs as much as possible. So really, that's a lot of MCI has been sort of that proponent in a way.
Yeah, and MCI kind of reminded me of the IFCA, the Iranian Female Composers Association.
Okay.
You should check, if you don't know of them, check them out. They're really cool. They've got Anahita Abbasi. Yeah, Anahita Abbasi, Nilüfer Avani. We interviewed those two, and with that, they helped get Iranian female composers out there more to get their performances and commissions. Nilüfer Avani is actually a friend of mine, and she just received a huge commission. And Anahita is having a performance actually tonight in San Diego, a short opera performance with the LBO.
Very cool.
And so it's really cool that there's these groups kind of congealing and coming up, and where the whole point is to be a supportive mechanism for everybody. It feels somewhat like in maybe previously past it hasn't been that way. It's been very music has a horrible history of nepotism.
Yes.
So, and
absolutely,
as an academic, it's you see it all the time when it comes to job postings and things. Not to bash on my field or anything, but when you see positions being filled by students of the teachers, or student of the teachers, or because they went to the same school. So it's cool that this is kind of helping rebuke that. Yeah,
I see what you mean by that, for sure. It's what I was going back to earlier too. That level of support and community is, again, just so important to have, because if you're not getting, speaking from a composer's perspective at least, if you're not getting the music out there, you're not really sharing it with anyone. Like, you're not having your friends or your family or your significant other listen to it, for example, then basically, you're not getting your music out there and you're really just writing for yourself. And is that what you really want to, unless that's what you really want to do, then fine. But if you want to, be a professional composer, get your music out there, you have to share it.
Right.
You have to share it. Part of the luck that I've had in my career has basically been because of getting my music out there. And I say that because you never know who's going to listen to it, who's going to be inspired by it or whatnot. And, it's gotten me a couple of opportunities, just based on that alone. It's just been incredible.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So that sense of community is really important, especially, like I said, especially in this field. So.
Oh, yeah. So many people are so used to the basic standard, like a performance ensemble, so they've got you've got the wind ensembles or the orchestra, you got string quartets and, woodwind quintets and whatnot. But what is an adaptable ensemble?
Got it. So the adaptable ensemble music, from what I understand, I'm not sure if I'm right on this, but adaptable ensemble music has basically been around for a pretty long time now. There has been a resurgence of interest in it, especially because of the circumstances of this pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
The basic premise was that we didn't know if schools were going to be open, if they were going to do in-person learning, if they were going to be doing virtual performances, because a lot of schools in the spring basically did virtual learning and so on.
Right.
So essentially, a lot of us didn't know what the performance situation was going to be and how many students were going to be in a classroom at a given time, and for that matter, what instruments we were going to have at a given time. So I have to give credit where credit is due. The resurgence really started with this group of composers called the Creative Repertoire Initiative.
Okay.
And a couple of conductors, I think, had spearheaded that too. Basically, they led the charge for this resurgence of adaptable ensemble music, where essentially you're dividing music into several parts. It could be 3, 4, 5. That's been the general, but there's also music for like 2 or 6 or 7 and whatnot. Essentially, there's a bunch of there are these parts created that represent a version of these either pre-existing pieces of music that already are out there, or these can be new compositions. And essentially, it's written in a way that any instrument assigned to a specific part can play it, and that you're still able to, play through that music or perform it, no matter what your performance situation may be. So my work in this has been, I've arranged 3 of my band pieces for 4-part or 5-part adaptable ensemble, but I've also opened it up so that if, say, your classroom actually has people who play string parts, like cello, if you have a couple cellists or something like that, I have string parts for my pieces too, so you can do that. And they're cool. They adhere to one of the 4 or 5 parts, but they're written idiomatically for their instrument, so it's there on the score too. And then the other aspect of my work in that field has been just offering like synthesized parts, or kind of just going all out with the technological aspect of it. Because if it's going to be adaptable ensemble, if you're doing a virtual performance, for example, it might be nice to have some backing tracks you can play to if you don't have any percussionists, for example. Or you want this really cool synthy kind of keyboard sound that adds a flavor to the piece that wasn't there before in the original band version. Like, for example, I have several backing tracks for my adaptable ensemble version of the Great River Rapid Chase, to fulfill some of those parts that might be missing. But I also have some of these synthy parts that add to it that, are playing off of this music, that adds something different entirely, brings the piece to life in a different way. So there's variety there. And what I love about this genre is that you can have that sort of variety. And a lot of the composers writing for this field are doing immensely wonderful work with this. And a lot of the people arranging for this are, same thing. They're doing immensely wonderful work. So, yeah, basically this music is here for the music to continue, really, for people that need something to play that they can still enjoy, that they're still able to play, again, no matter what the performance situation may be. So I have 3 arrangements currently published of as I said, my pre-existing band pieces. I also have 1 very high-level composition that's extremely experimental for adaptable ensemble, that's basically divided into families of instruments like aerophones or specifically brass or strings and whatnot. That's very aleatoric and very open, sort of in its own way. So my experience with this has been minimal so far, but I'm still learning with every new piece. I'm trying to get a couple more written before the year's over. I don't know if that's going to happen, but all the same, it's still a pretty cool genre in my mind, and it just opens the compositional aspects of it to a whole new level, I think. So it's definitely something I want to, keep writing for, even even in the event, we go back to playing like full band and orchestra music and whatnot, and we circumvent this pandemic, which, of course we will, and and whatnot. So
yeah. So when you write it, do you have like, just to kind of get an idea, because I tried to figure out exactly how this might be portrayed. Do you have like a high voice and then like medium middle voice or anything like that, or how are the parts covered in such a way?
Got it. Yeah, I understand what you're asking. That's my first general approach, what you described. Having, a high voice, a medium voice, and sort of the lower voices. But with a piece that has like 4 or 5 parts or something like that, usually you might have some instruments assigned that, might fit better with a second part or a third part. Like you have a couple of extra clarinet or trumpet parts or alto saxophones or soprano, for example, that might work well in one part as opposed to another part. And I say that because some of my ensemble pieces switch melodic roles between various of the 4 or 5 parts and whatnot. And I do want to add to that there are some fantastic templates out there for composers to use for their for these flex ensemble or flex band pieces that a lot of people have been using recently too. And so my basis had been starting with those templates. Where was I going with this? But as I said, I do want to add, I sort of generally think it along those lines first, but then I try to sort of stretch that a little bit, see if I can use one of the other parts to bring out the melody in a way and have the others accompany. I don't just want the first part to play the melody all the time, because for the players that would get really boring, right? And it would not actually fit the composition too. If I remember, I think my adaptable ensemble arrangement, the Golden Pure, the melody passes around a lot between the 4 parts because the range of the melody changes. Where it is in the original band version, where it's placed, changes too. So it goes lower or higher in the ensemble and whatnot. So those are definitely things to consider if you're approaching writing for adaptable ensemble music. What can you do that engages your players, but also just doesn't assign each of the parts to a specific role? It gives everyone something to do beyond just one specific role. And to be honest with you, I think I actually approach a lot of my music that way. I try to give everybody something to do that isn't just involved in a specific type of role, just accompaniment only, or things like that. So like my music is very percussion heavy, for example, for that reason. I want to give percussion something to do. Right. May not be the best thing in the world, but in some cases with the transitions between instruments and whatnot, but it can be nice at times.
Yeah, and it's in each family of instrument, I mean, they have their own high, middle, low voice, and so I would assume that, in a way, it's a lot freer to be able to do it this way than it is to think about, okay, I need to make sure that this is here and that this, this instrument, or I have to make sure that I have to double the oboe and English horn, or, the contra bass clarinet with the, whatever and stuff. So it's like, you give not just yourself, but also the performers a little more freedom in order to really feel the entire piece. Because you and I both know, and there's many people out there who have to endure having to do the, papas and the,
practically every Sousa horn part ever written.
Oh God,
practically.
1 5 1 5 1
on offbeats.
Yeah,
practically.
Yeah. Oh yeah, or the poor horned part. They're always going bop 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 bop.
Yeah, that's what I was referring to. Yeah, that's exactly what I was referring to. So in a way, it sort of frees it up. It sort of frees up the palette when you're writing the piece. And then you have to prepare the parts, because there's a lot of parts to prepare for that flexibility. And then you come across obstacles like, well, I have this line, this melody here, but I can't play that in that really high octave in English horn. If I want to break the instrument or make the English horn player mad, maybe, So with that flexibility, with that freedom that you have, where you're just writing for those parts, you also have to take into consideration you still have to take into consideration who you're writing for. So there's a lot of instances that I explicitly state in my, arrangements or my adaptable ensemble compositions where this octave shift happens, or if, for example, a trombone player can't actually play this, so they actually drop out, in which case that specific part is either covered in another instrument that has it in that part if it's doubled, or it's covered in the backing tracks that come with it. Again, it frees it up in a different way. It frees it up in your performance of it, but maybe not necessarily the writing approach to it, if that makes sense.
Oh,
So
totally.
you still have to think about those instrumental idiomatic capabilities. It's just a lot of puzzle solving, but it's a lot of really good puzzle solving in a way, because in the end, you're still going to have this result that creates this huge opportunity for color and sound that you're going to get from every performance of the work, and practically every performance will be different too, which is a type of music that I really like. And again, something I would definitely want to explore more.
Oh yeah.
In my future works. I'm sort of trying to do that in some ways with the bigger pieces I'm writing now, but it's different, and I like different, honestly.
Yeah, it's something that I had never really done. I did kind of a similar thing. We were assigned in our master's, we had to take an improvisation course. And in the course, we had to create something that people would perform with, but you couldn't use notation.
Ooh, that's interesting. I like that.
Yeah. And so I was like, I was, like raised on black notes, so it's like, it was the hardest thing I could think about. And then when I started thinking, well, what else could inspire me? And so I started using pictures. And then from that, I was just like, okay, so these are the types of, I knew what instruments we had in our class. And all I said when we had to perform it for the class was like, okay, you just react to the pictures. That's all you want. That's all I wanted, And it was one of the coolest pieces I think I'd ever done.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah.
Because
it makes you think about composition differently, for sure.
Oh yeah. It was so interesting to just let them react, I know this isn't exactly, similar to what's going on with the adaptable ensembles, but in a way, it's you're handing over some of the freedom and still controlling the output. Does that make sense?
In some ways, yeah, and it's sort of similar with these adaptable ensemble pieces. The approach to music making isn't really different per se.
Right.
It's just the actual compositional output, as you mentioned, that you're putting out there. You do still have some degree of control, but you still also have to give up some degree of control.
Right.
And just allow your performers to make it their own, which is also another kind of music I really like to try and write if I can, giving that flexibility. Improvisation really comes into hand with that, especially too, because that really allows the performers to make it their own. So something like you're describing, for example, I could just see the creative possibilities with that and just, see your performers going haywire with it and just enjoying it.
Yeah. Sure. I mean, it was great that most of my class that I actually started my master's with were jazz musicians. So, because University of Nevada, Reno has a really good jazz program. And so I was one of the few classical people in there. And when it came time for them to perform, they were able to not just react off of the pictures, but react off each other. There was a lot of cool things, like they traded parts that they heard back and forth. And you had to, as a composer, I had to think of, what is this kind of story that I'm going to tell with these pictures, and so you still have a lot of control over that. It's a lot of input, which was really interesting. So I definitely want to look and find some of these adaptable things and see how it goes, because it definitely sounds interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, my experience with this has only been minimal. And I'm sure a lot of people have also, felt the same way this year. Again, where it's adaptation to the circumstances prevailing us right now in the community.
Right.
And with everything going on in the world. But yeah, definitely is something worth looking into, something worth getting into as well. Like I said, I think this is something I'm probably going to continue to write for even after, after we have that chance to be able to play like full band and orchestra music again and go back to that. It's probably still something that I will still write for and keep in the back of my head or something like that,
Yeah. Well, let's talk about this new piece you've got where you're working on. You kind of talked about it a little bit with Kevin. Tell us all about this symphony of yours.
So this project started coming into my mind before the pandemic began, before all of this started. And the piece actually started out as something that I wanted to explore the idea of a jazz combo and either a concert band or a wind ensemble or an orchestra, just basically playing off of each other. What would result of that? Would they be at odds? Would they be fighting a lot? It's two disparate genres of music basically clashing with each other.
Mm-hmm.
So I started, so having this combo in mind, I started asking people that I knew that I had worked with before, including some, mutual colleagues of colleagues and whatnot, to see if they'd be interested in something like this. And basically, we started a collaboration process that ended up being the 6-player jazz combo that I'm currently working with right now, including, as I mentioned, Jordan Van Keemer and Kevin Day. They're part of the combo. The other members are Lily Christie on trumpet, Amanda Russo, who's a fantastic bass guitarist, freelancer in New York City, and she's played like all around the world, including Brazil and whatnot. Kevin Keith is our drummer. Again, Jordan's on saxophone, Kevin Day is on piano, and we have Emily Diericks on flute. She's the flutist in the combo, which is going to add something different to it. So before I forget, flute, saxophone, trumpet, piano, drums, bass, guitar. Okay, that is everybody. I don't think I forgot one. So those are the people I'm collaborating with on the combo, and that's how it started. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized, do I really want to write a piece that's about 20 or 30 minutes of basically just jazz and concert music fighting each other all the time? Is that really worth it? Is anything really gonna come from all of this fighting? Which relate to that as you will with anything going on. Is anything really gonna come from all this fighting? I'm a sucker for narrative stories with something more to it. And for the longest time, this racked me, and that the piece was lacking something, anything that I think would have given a purpose that it would need to exist, to function like this, and whatnot. So, as my collaboration continued with the members of the jazz combo, we kept talking about this. One day, I thought of another idea. Well, what if we just had a 7th person that was just separate from all of this, like an outsider, from an outside perspective, if you will, trying to just stop all this chaos, right? Trying to find something that will stop all of this and maybe find a way to be able to get these two groups to listen to each other, which really adds to the musical element of it, listen to each other, and maybe even begin to heal at the same time, find some sense of peace. Like lasting peace, systemic change, and peace and whatnot. So with that in mind, first my combo and I realized basically during the collaborative process that all of us really had something to say with a bunch of issues going on in the world right now. So those 6 people in the combo each brought an issue that they're affected by, that is ongoing in the world, that is relevant to our political or social or economic or global climate today. Mm-hmm. So those issues are going to be discussed in the piece, and they're going to have this platform that they create where they're improvising, where it's just them. They're doing their own thing, and they're, talking about these issues, and all of which, all of them are advocating for, again, systemic change, justice, and peace, and whatnot, right? So this 7th soloist is our solo flutist for the piece, Amy Rosendahl. She's also a music therapist and a sound healing practitioner as well. She's certified sound healer. Wow. And she brought that to the piece. And that changed basically everything.
Yeah.
You ever have that moment as a composer where you're racking your brain for an answer for how is this going to work? How is all of this going to work? That was me for the symphony for basically about 2 months or something like that. And literally in our first full meeting with the combo and with Amy involved, she brought the sound healing aspect of it, and it's just so wonderful. And it ended up just working really well for the piece that we are basically full blown using it for the work, and it's going to be highlighted just as much as the jazz elements and whatnot. So all that's coming together. So she's not only playing flute for the piece, she also has this set of 7, I think, crystal quartz singing bowls tunes to the key of
cool.
that she's going to use for the piece. And singing bowls are one of a variety of common instruments that are used for sound healing on sessions and whatnot. I'll get to that in a minute. And that's basically going to be that element that helps tie all this together.
Wow.
First of all, I have to say I'm really grateful to all my collaborators. 1, they're fantastic people. 2, they're amazing artists. And 3, they're the ones really bringing this piece to life. This is not really mine, which is all I can say about it, really. Yeah, I'm writing the music, but this is really theirs. It's not really just mine, per se. But the sound healing element, basically it's a meditative practice that, where musical vibrations are essentially used to help heal parts of one's body. Vibrations are basically used. So again, singing bowls can be used for this. Tuning forks can be used. And it's basically, the gist of it is that if there's a part of one's body that doesn't resonate with their environment or their surroundings, quote unquote dissonant, if you will, with their surroundings, sound healing is used to focus on that specific part. So eventually that part is healed, that you resonate with your environment, and that essentially you find peace or something along those lines. It's again a form of meditation that does that. So for the symphony, that's how we're going to use it, really, is trying to use it as a means to heal on a musical level for these 2 groups. And so, you have this jazz combo, you have this large ensemble, there's a version for wind ensemble, there's a version for orchestra in the works. You have this fixed media element where we're trying to incorporate interviews of people talking about the issues that are going to be discussed in the piece as well. There's poetry involved, something I'm still working on. And all of that is really going to come together to, 1, talk about these issues that are ongoing in our world right now, first and foremost. But 2, turn it into this narrative of getting to a point where maybe we could start listening to each other again. Because, there's a lot of divide between many of us right now, especially in the country. So, this piece is addressing that divide in a way.
Yeah.
So that's the essential gist of it.
That's really cool. I was actually kind of talking about a similar idea with Joel Thompson. And, he writes a lot of music that's politically and socially introspective and retrospective. He wrote the piece, The 7 Last Words of the Unarmed. His big thing is writing for a community, and, for him, music started early on, and he wants to create this sense of community. And within community, we have to face the things that we don't like about what might be going on,
Exactly.
And only through facing that will we be able to actually come together more and find common grounds. And it's really cool that you're going to do it this way. He didn't think that, music could be healing in such a way that makes people totally change, but at least it gives them something to think about, and
that makes
whereas
sense.
This you're pulling into that healing aspect. And I honestly believe that music is one of those things that really can heal, that if you don't look at all the other aspects that are going on, especially with like you keep saying, the times that we're living in, then we're not going to be able to heal, So,
especially if we're not listening to each other.
Yeah.
Especially that. Yeah, I agree with all that. Absolutely. This piece in its own way is going to certainly address the community aspects of it. Again, also address, the conflicts going on and many of the issues happening on our planet right now that are affecting so many of us.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like you said too, I want to be able to, my goal with this piece, first and foremost, is that it's not my own. Again, it's the result of everything that the people I'm working with are bringing to it. That's it, first and foremost. But also that is like you mentioned, to leave something people to think about, but also using it as a means to show that we can heal our divides, no matter what. As long as, we're not tolerating things like racism or sexism or misogyny, that, we all collectively, combat these things and again, fight for systemic change, justice, and peace. We can't, like, for example, we can't heal our divide and come together, but also tolerate racism and sexism and misogyny and attacks against the LGBT community. And
right.
Like that. That's not healing. That's just something else entirely, but it's not healing.
Yeah, it's complacency.
That's it. That's the word I was looking for. Exactly right. It's complacency. That's not healing. This piece, you alluded to it already, but yeah, this piece in its own way is confronting the very things that many of us don't want to talk about. And in a way, it's doing that for me too, because this is not something that I have ever talked about in my music before. My music, two of my pieces have hinted at the possibility of something political. The saxophone quartet that I wrote for Zenith talked about the idea of bread and circuses, which in and of itself is a political term of using entertainment and small comfort like food or whatnot to distract people, but not to distract people, but not necessarily solve a major problem that needs to be solved, like, I don't know, world hunger or economic climate or something like that.
Right.
But my music had never really been explicitly political until this piece, when, at this point, when my collaborators or I again, collectively came to the conclusion that they needed to talk about these very issues affecting them, and the piece became inherently political in that respect. And so we're fully embracing it because it has to. It has to do that,
Yeah, yeah.
So it's a wide variety of things, this piece, but the one thing that I do want to aim for at the end is that hopefully it leaves a lot for people to think about. And, it again demonstrates that we can find a way to heal really effectively while, fighting for these things that matter. Especially, and I haven't talked about this yet, especially in regards to what we're going through now with the COVID-19 pandemic. This piece talks about everything I just described, but it also talks about it in context with the COVID-19 pandemic and everyone that we have lost to this.
Yeah, no, I think that it's such a really cool idea. And, I think we'll see a lot of pieces coming up from this pandemic and these times, just as politically active and interesting as you would hear from someone else. So, Josh, I think that was great. I think it's great having you on here. It's been amazing. It's been educational and inspiring, and it's always really cool to see a community working together to help bring up others. And and to help heal in a way. So it's wonderful, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me again. It's been really great getting to talk with you, and I just want to stress again that sense of community is really, really important right now, more than anything else. You know, we have to keep that alive, because otherwise I think our field is going to suffer if we don't. So just keep colleagues, be a good person, all that stuff.
Exactly.
Thanks again for the opportunity and for having me on here. It was really great getting to talk with you about, everything that's been going on.
Perfect.
For me at least.
No worries. Thank you so much. I appreciate it too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Sounds of the World podcast. We hope you enjoyed the episode. There are links to everything in the episode description and also on our website.
You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Sounds of the World. To show support for Sounds of the World podcast, please join our Patreon, where you can have access to our after-party discussions with guests, discounted merchandise, and even more.
If you have any questions, answers, or episode suggestions, please email us at soundsoftheworldpodcast@gmail.com. Well, Bill, I think I'm going to go have a beer now.
Hey, there you go.